Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. We've got an awesome show for you guys tonight and a truly great guest. But before that, as always, we're going to give a shout out to two of our sponsors real quick. First up, you can be a proud libertarian and get all of the best Liberty swag all in one place. You can find hats, t-shirts, books, yard signs, bumper stickers, and so much more over at proudlibertarian.com, whether it's for you or a gift for somebody else, whether it's something that you are trying to make people like you or trying to piss people off with it. However it is that you feel like expressing yourself, be a proud libertarian and wear it on your sleeve, literally, with some of the stuff over at Proud Libertarian. We also have Zoom. Go beyond shrooms with Zoom. From Advanced Mycology, the makers of Shroom and Mycadelic Grow Bags, comes a clean, safe, legal, and pure tablet designed for meaningful experiences. Mitocin is a natural psilocybin analog that provides a shorter, clearer trip with the same euphoric, groundbreaking effects. And most importantly, it is completely legal in all 50 states. You can go to zoomtrip.com, that's XUMTRIP.com, to learn more about Mitocin, the dosages, and shipping information, and all of that. And I cannot recommend these enough. The people that make them are some of the most genuine people I've gotten to work with in this movement, and they personally test every single batch to assure quality experiences for their customers, and because it's a great time for them too. And you can get a nice tester pack of 4 for just $20. Go on over to advancedmyco.com to order yours today. That link is down in the description. That's advancedmyco.com. Use promo code FSM to get $5 off your first order. And they actually just released a new product called Per. That is a MDMA analog that I don't know too much about it. I haven't read all the product information, but pretty excited about that new product. So definitely go check that out. I'm excited because I think I might get some samples. And then also in the description today, we're running a GoFundMe to get a couple of new pieces of equipment, mostly the camera that I typically rent for all of the live events that we go and cover. We're trying to actually purchase it so that we can cut down on the expense of doing a lot of these live events. We're scheduled to do almost a dozen this year. So would really help if we weren't dropping a couple $100s on renting the equipment every time. So there's a GoFundMe link in the description. Any little bit helps if you guys can go check that out. Would super appreciate it. But without any further ado, as I said, we have a wonderful guest for you tonight. Amity, she's an outspoken pro-life and anti-war Catholic libertarian activist committed to decentralizing authority away from distant institutions and back to families, churches, and local communities. I'm super excited. There's the right button. There we go. Amity, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. So I always like to start off when we have a first-time guest with kind of your libertarian testimony. So I'm curious, where did you first hear the word libertarian and what kind of brought you in?
Oh, well, I grew up in a Christian conservative household. And so I was always, raised around Republican ethics and politics. When I became an adult, I went right back into, Republican politics. I was involved with the National Federation of Republican Women, did some local grassroots campaigning for some local Republican politicians. And then I became a business owner in my mid-20s. And then I started having to pay payroll tax and, income tax and property tax and all the things. And I started wondering, why am I spending all this money for the federal government when I can barely feed my kids? And so I started, Rand Paul's annual Festivus airing of grievances, where he goes through all the pork that's in all the different bills.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing that long before I even knew who Rand Paul was. I was looking up bills, reading them, trying to figure out what the government was spending my money on, and it really pissed me off. So I hated taxes that the government was taking from me long before, I was really shaped into anything else politically. And then 9/11 happened, and shock and awe, George Bush sent troops over to the Middle East to, take out Saddam Hussein, who supposedly was involved in 9/11, but not really. And then we find out it's all about oil. And I was really anti-war from the very beginning. Then 2008 rolls around, and here is Ron Paul running in the Republican primary. And I didn't realize that there was actually someone who had the conservative Christian values that I did, but also was anti-war. And so I got behind Ron Paul. Of course, the GOP picked John McCain. And then in 2012, the GOP really did him dirty in the primaries. Ron Paul again didn't win, and they picked Mitt Romney. And so I felt politically homeless and just didn't know really where to go. I knew I wasn't a Democrat. And my sister at the time had actually become a libertarian, and she shared the platform with me, and I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a libertarian. So 2013, I joined the Libertarian Party and found the local affiliate in Virginia and started campaigning for local candidates and statewide candidates there.
Nice. I love, there's nothing will radicalize you faster than actually doing your homework and figuring out what the government's doing with your tax dollars. That's, I always feel a little bit condescending when we talk about stuff like, libertarians just what you are when you know what you're talking about. There's some of those talking points that are like really condescending, but at the same time, a lot of them are really accurate, because it's really difficult to fully look through all of these bills and all of this spending and watch the budget and pay attention and be a little nerdy about it and then not come out like one of us.
Right.
Unless you are, I feel like you have to be such a bleeding heart that you think that, well, it's the only way, right?
Well, I mean, I've definitely realized that, individuals can do better, and, churches and communities can do better than the government at anything they do. Everything they put their hands on turns to shit, pretty much. And there's corruption, and, there's lobbyists that get their cut, and it's just not efficient, if anything else.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really brought me, is long before I had any kind of actual moral aversion to government force or anything like that, long before the NAP or any of those types of things would have really applied to my philosophy. It was genuinely just that old school, the government's supposed to work for you kind of mentality, and constitutionalism of, well, you're supposed to be providing these XYZ services and you don't do it at all. And then we're having to come in behind you with the private sector anyway to fill in all the gaps and everything. We've got dominoes out here filling in potholes. That was a lot of that dominoes thing was way after, but that kind of mentality is what brought me this way a lot too, was just what are you doing with my money?
Yeah. Domino's, the CEO, actually created a town in Florida called Ave Maria, Florida. He's a devout Catholic. And there's an entire town that was developed by the CEO of Domino's. And I think, local communities that govern themselves work really well. I've visited there, and it's beautiful, and it's really well done.
That's really interesting. I did not know that. That's cool. We could do. I've said that I want to do something kind of like a Cupertino outside of Austin, like what Cupertino is to San Francisco. Have that kind of like tech hub that's off into the suburbs with like a couple of like really big corporation campuses. As much as we all dislike the people that run the Bay Area currently, the way they do it is kind of cool, and the buildings are really cool looking, and to be able to work and live and eat and everything all within, a walkable distance that's all maintained privately. There's a lot of, I just wish they weren't so evil on the back end of everything.
Right.
Oh man. So you sent me over this tweet thread, which I absolutely loved. I reread through it again today, and I would love to go kind of just down through this with you, your dignity for human life in 5 parts. Because I think like you really just kind of hit all of the things with this, and it's a very succinct kind of platform almost. It's better than the LP platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the consistent ethic of life is a philosophy which, concludes that if you're truly pro-life, then it necessitates that you're also anti-war, against the death penalty, against government-controlled euthanasia. And, I hold this view not just on moral grounds, but, I believe that all life is precious and a gift from God. But I also advocate for solutions, from a libertarian lens.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is a nice kind of crossover. We actually just had Jacob Winograd on the show last week, and we were talking about this a lot too, of kind of bringing those two worlds together in a way where we're speaking to people's more moral sensibilities and the ethics that they're grounded on, instead of just trying to spit numbers and political facts at them. So let's start off with kind of the root thing, because I guess that would be the most contentious one, even for my audience, is the kind of pro-life section, and how you come to your conclusion on abortion. I'm personally with you on it. I am also pro-life, but I'm definitely one of those wishy-washy libertarians on it, where it's like I really am, but I don't want to do anything about it, because most of the enforcement mechanisms there get really dicey quickly.
Well, I think that's my view as well. I'm 100% pro-life. I believe the preborn deserve protection, but I don't think the state can solve moral problems by criminalizing women. Mm-hmm. I think that voluntary, non-coercive solutions are better, like charity and community solutions. Mm-hmm. The thing that I think the government can do to help the abortion issue is to give our tax dollars back to us, stop stealing from us, so that we have more revenue for ourselves, the money we earn, and we can spend that on charity and, compassionate programs like crisis pregnancy centers, adoption, things that will help women to choose other avenues other than abortion. I mean, we're not going to solve the abortion debate as far as making it illegal. Should it be illegal? That gets into government intrusion on individual liberties. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that, the government should just stay out of it and allow us to be able to be charitable to organizations that we find beneficial that can help women.
Yeah. And it's, documented over and over again that actually drives down like teen pregnancies or unwanted pregnancies and things like that. There are so many better ways to do it than through legislation, just statistically, on top of the moral argument. I couldn't agree more. This is actually one of the other early issues that I had a strong opinion on growing up, because, also raised in the church and very, conservative, not necessarily Republican, but very conservative, to where, a lot of people around me growing up in New York were very annoyed with our abortion laws, which, New York goes way too far on a lot of it. But it was a constant conversation around me of, we need to ban this, we need to ban this, we need to ban this. And looking around at drug use around me, and, doing my research on the alcohol prohibition and all of these other things, I'm like, I don't want to see this become a backroom, back alley kind of industry. That's so much worse. So we need a different solution. And I got crucified for saying that, like, in my Sunday school. That was not a popular take at all. And that kind of led me to looking into some of the different, pages and people that would eventually lead me to libertarianism. Was kind of trying to find a nuanced somewhere in the middle on this issue.
Yeah, well, if you had asked me even a couple of years ago, I may have said, let's have the government outlaw it, let's call it murder. But then when you bring it to that logical conclusion, if you charge someone with murder, what value does that have for a woman who's, going through something? It ruins families. Of course, taking the life of a child is not something that I would ever advocate for, but there's definitely more, compassionate ways to deal with women who just find themselves in situations that they think they can't get out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I personally believe that a good chunk of why society views the unborn as not the same as the born is a centuries old thing of the birth rates were fairly low. Successful pregnancy rates used to be in the teens for most women. And so you couldn't put that kind of emotional backing behind just the pregnancy. Otherwise, you would be constantly in mourning most of your adult life,
right,
up until 100 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, before the trend started really changing drastically to where, a miscarriage is less common than a birth at this point, which is great. But I think if you fully go all the way in society to treating them the same, then you have to carry with that a lot of baggage with, unsuccessful pregnancies too, which I don't think anybody wants to touch that. And that's holding a lot of people back too.
Yeah, and if we legislate this to the, fullest extent, then you have the government policing hospitals. A miscarriage may be, somebody may be accused of an abortion if they have a miscarriage. And, it really gets into some sketchy waters when the state's involved. And I'm to the point where even in the last year, especially with the last administration, who, pretty much did a 180 on all their campaign promises, I've just come to the conclusion that, there is no government solution for anything, because the politicians will just lie and do whatever's in their best interest. And there's no benefit for the average citizen in the country. So, take that to the logical conclusion of, enforcing abortion as murder. And, we're going to have prisons filled with women who just maybe needed a helping hand, or, didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Completely off topic, but on the topic of government lying, did you see the clips of Trump mixing up Greenland and Iceland today?
I didn't.
So he, multiple times over, talks about Iceland by name. He's talking about Greenland clearly, given the context, but says Iceland 4 times over. And the press secretary, Caroline, actually put out a thing that he said land of ice, which it would describe Greenland and not Iceland. But it's on video. Like, it's like I tweeted it right in the comments, and yet there's still so many people with such levels of cognitive dissonance that they're going to be like, oh yep, no, she said the media is lying about Trump again, so the media must be lying about Trump again.
There's people who, if Trump says the sky is purple, they will insist that it's purple. I've had so many disagreements with people online recently about, Fourth Amendment violations, Second Amendment violations. I mean, It's just ridiculous how people will flip when, their savior in chief is saying something.
Yeah. And I think that kind of speaks to the crux of your, the consistent ethic.
Right.
That's the important word that I feel like 99% of people actively know what consistency means, because they haven't ever seen it from their political party. And it's so obnoxious watching both sides just cry hypocrisy about the other side, and it's as if it excuses their own hypocrisy.
Right.
I'm never going to understand that one. But it brings us quickly and easily to your second point here, of war, which I'm sure no one in the comments or watching this is going to disagree with us on. But I 100% agree that it's an important thing to kind of tie those together, because if you're going to claim pro-life, then you have to also claim anti-war.
Absolutely. The state is the largest institutional killer in human history. Governments were responsible for over 260 million deaths in the 20th century. And just since 9/11, the US government has spent $10 trillion on war and has killed millions of people. And when I say the US government has killed millions of people, either through their funding of other countries or, our actions in the Middle East and around the world, we've toppled regimes in the name of democracy, and then, completely ruined infrastructure, killed not just other troops and our own troops, but, women and children. And it's heartbreaking, because all life is precious. If you say you're pro-life, then, the Republicans in particular seem to be more gung-ho on war and very pro-life. But I don't understand how you can look at the images of these babies laying in rubble, most recently in Gaza, with the genocide that's going on over there, and call yourself pro-life.
Yeah, they've been able to be convinced that these people deserve it in most circumstances. I think is one of the defining things is the success of the U.S. propaganda wing at this point. Because even, especially Gaza specifically, it's obviously I don't agree with this take, but it's pretty easy to make a narrative that says, October 7th, such and such, this and this other thing, they had it coming, they asked for it, human shields, not their fault. We've all heard all of those talking points. And especially if you believe that like one side is God's chosen people that you're supposed to protect with everything you've got, it's really hard to get to some of those people. Like even some of my closest friends and family are in that camp of like super Zionist Christian types that not necessarily like reveling in the deaths in Palestine, but definitely don't care about them. And it's really hard to get to some of those people. And you take the next conflict, very similar with like Venezuela. You can easily make a case that whatever death and destruction happens there is not our fault, but the fault of socialism or drug cartels or some other thing that you point the blame at. Meanwhile, we're killing millions of people.
Exactly. Yeah, the most ridiculous argument I've heard is, well, Hamas shouldn't have hit out, in hospitals or schools because then these children wouldn't get killed. It's Hamas's fault.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, let's say we have a school shooter in one of our cities. You don't blow up the entire school to take out the shooter. So if they have precision targets and they have the best, spying capabilities in the world, Mossad is known for being, just as good as the CIA, if not better. And if they know where these people are, then they could go in, they control the region. They could go in and take these people out and not turn the entire region to rubble.
Mm-hmm.
So, I advocate for the US government. I push hard on our politicians to advocate for peace, to break down the military industrial complex. We should not be paying with our tax dollars to kill people around the world. And, peace and diplomacy is super important. I think it not only prevents wars, but also fosters free trade.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps not only with, human life, but also with economies around the world, including our own.
Yeah. And it's a uniquely governmental problem. I feel like, if you break it down to pure, old school caveman, like anarchy, you can make the arguments of like tribal warfare and stuff like that is inevitable if you take away all of society and rules and things like that. But I don't have any issues with anybody, like any people group specifically. I know I'm not maybe the best example because I don't really have issues with many people at all, but I don't know of any. Well, there are a few countries that I would say that the actual people of the country hate a people of another country enough to justify their governments actually being truly representative when they go to war. Like the India-Pakistan war. That one I'll give them. That's one that probably, if you ask the average person, they cared too. But so many of these are just, people playing a game of Risk because it's fun and profitable for their friends, and real lives are being lost in the process. If there was actually some sort of a conflict where the average American cared enough to go fight in some war, then okay, let's do that, maybe. But I'm not going to stop you by force either. But we haven't had a situation like that in 50 years plus.
Yeah, I just saw a meme today where a soccer player with USA on the back of his jersey had his arm around a soccer player with Iran on his jersey. And, they were hugging each other. And, the caption was like, it's the governments who want war. And that really rings true because average citizens in most of these countries do not want war. They don't want us coming into their sandbox and, blowing shit up, and we definitely don't want to be doing that. The average citizens don't want to go over there. It's the governments and the oligarchs who are enriching themselves through these war games. And, the average person in whatever country is affected, they're the ones who suffer.
Yeah. And I feel like similarly with most of the libertarian answers to most of the problems, even if you do allow for some amount of war that just, of human nature, if you take away the oligarchy and the bureaucracy and the compulsion behind most of it, you get to just actually be left with the legitimate conflict. Again, if there is something, then let it be. Similar to where, if we legalize prostitution, it de-incentivizes human trafficking, and it's just the consensual interactions. That principle, I feel like, applies all over including to war, where if you take away the government stuff, then you can actually allow for a true representative, okay, maybe we do want to liberate some country from some terrible dictator that's actually so bad that most of our armed forces are like, yeah, no, we're cool going over there and doing that. Okay.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I feel like if the governments got out of the way, there would be a lot more peaceful people just trying to live their lives and and you know, be left alone.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be real nice.
The libertarians try to take over the world to leave you alone. That's one of the first like trope characteristics of libertarianism I ever heard when I like first caught wind of the Johnson campaign in 2016, and I like that one a lot. I've kind of clung to it ever since. So your third point is probably the one that I struggle with the most. It's capital punishment. But I agree that it's, if you're trying to consistently apply the logic, it definitely applies here. So walk us through your logic on that one, and I'll comment.
Yeah, so from a moral perspective, I feel like there's more humanitarian ways to keep dangerous people away from society when that's necessary. But the rub for me is the state gets it wrong too many times, and innocent lives have been taken. In Florida alone, in the last 50 years, 20% of death row inmates have been exonerated after later evidence proves their innocence. So that's a large number. And of the 80% who have been executed, think about how many of those may not have received a fair trial, or the evidence wasn't presented to exonerate them. We have most definitely put people to death who were innocent. Mm-hmm. And one innocent life, if we have the ability to just keep someone in prison for life if they're a danger to society, then that's better than killing an innocent human. And some people will make the argument, well, you're spending all this money keeping them in prison, but when you put someone on death row and they have the appeals process they have to go through, then that is actually more expensive than housing a prisoner for life. Mm-hmm. So if we are going to have, I'm an anarchist at heart, but we don't live in a utopia. So we're always going to have government control and rule over certain aspects of life. And when it comes to the prison system, the government is too corrupt. From the judicial system all the way to, the prisons themselves, they just get it wrong. And I just can't fathom another innocent life being put to death. And from a Christian perspective, the longer someone's alive is the longer they have the opportunity to come to a faith in Jesus Christ. And so from a moral perspective, that's where I land on that.
Crazy enough, life in prison is one of the higher likelihoods you'll have to end up saved in America.
Yeah, well, several years ago, I worked with a prison ministry, and we would go in and take church services in the correction center that was near my home, or not near, it was about an hour away, but we'd go once a week and take church services there. And there are a lot of people in prisons who come to faith while they're incarcerated. I mean, they don't have much more to do. So, reading and studying and, having scripture to guide them is a really positive thing there.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has always kind of eaten at me is experiencing, growing up, I had a few like acquaintances and people in my life that were, ex-cons and ex-convicts and whatever. And then, I've been arrested and spent some time in a few different facilities in New York. And it is crazy how I try to put this correctly, how beneficial prison time is for some humans. I very much dislike everything about the prison system, and it's a terrible place to put most people. But there is a certain percentage of just like, there's a type of person that when you give them that much structure mixed with that much free time and that many resources to just kind of learn and do whatever it is that they can feel like doing, they come out of that, buff, healthy geniuses.
Right.
and a lot of times mentally stable again. They're out of whatever crowd was drawing them into crime to begin with. And we have people serving life sentences or even, still have 10, 20 years left on their sentence. That would be just immensely valuable members of our workforce.
Absolutely. Yeah, I met many people like that in my time in prison ministry, for sure.
And, it's to a point where, the average person that I remember interacting with in prison outperforms most of the average workforces I've been in. That's for sure, especially entry level. It's I definitely think that we hold people for far too long. But if we get rid of the death penalty, then we at least give people more opportunities to go through that appeals process and the release process and possibly be able to, just get back out into society after being rehabilitated. I think that we always need to be able to give that ability regardless of what the crime is or the situation. I feel like there's always a possibility of rehabilitation, even for the craziest of people.
For sure.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those issues that I've struggled with the most, I think, from a libertarian perspective. And the cost thing that you mentioned, I feel like was the big thing that pushed me the rest of the way into the anti-death penalty camp. Because it before I learned that, the logical, just logic tells you the opposite should be true. It should be cheaper to kill somebody than to keep them alive for 20 to 50 years. That doesn't make any sense that it's more expensive. But when you actually look at those numbers, that was definitely what finished shifting me into that camp, because it isn't even that argument.
Yeah, and this isn't really on the topic of the death penalty, but just prisons in general and how corrupt our government is. They have their friends that are involved in the private prison industry, and we have a higher percentage of citizens in the United States that are in prison than any other country in the world, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's because just with other industries that government pays for and gets involved in, there's corruption at every turn. And I don't know if you knew this, but Pam Bondi was involved in the prison industrial complex before she became Attorney General. And so,
makes sense.
Take that how you will, but she's a big proponent of red flag laws and a lot of other quote unquote crimes that have no victim. And she profits off of people going to prison for victimless crimes.
That's I did not know that. That I feel like of all of the kind of bipartisan issues that the average American could agree on, the conflict of interest laws need to change, I think, takes precedence over term limits or ranked choice voting or any of those other kind of fixes. Is we need to fix that revolving door of just being able to literally profit off of your elected or appointed positions constantly.
Absolutely. I think, the lobbyists and even stock trading from, insider information in Congress, all of it needs to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the insider trading one is difficult for me because I feel like we do just have to ban trading in general for politicians, because I couldn't imagine telling people that they had to knowingly make bad investments,
Right.
which is what the current laws basically say, is you have to know that your stocks are going to plummet and not sell.
Right.
And that's just, I feel like that even with the moral arguments of insider trading and everything, like, that still just feels wrong. Even to do it to Nancy Pelosi feels mean.
I have an idea. Let's just abolish the federal government, and then they can trade whatever they want.
There you go. I like it. Perfect. Or we can abolish the stock market. And at least the current government controlled version of it. Let it go back to how it actually used to work, where it was companies interacting with investors instead of
Right.
a government middleman.
Absolutely.
So similar, but obviously another step in the same direction is euthanasia, which this one, I think, of all of them has the strongest like libertarian argument as far as, especially if it's consensual in some sort of way, but again is just part of what I see as like a consistent deterioration on the value of life in society. So give me your take on the euthanasia.
Yeah, well, it's becoming the norm in some countries where especially where there's government-controlled healthcare, government is deciding who should and shouldn't be euthanized, which is horrible. And just last month, Kathy Hochul in New York, she made assisted suicide legal, which I understand that these decisions should be made between a doctor and a patient. But I think when we have so much government intervention in our healthcare system, it's that slippery slope where they could get to the point where they're dictating, well, this person is too old or too diseased or what have you. They've been in a coma too long. We're not going to cover healthcare anymore, especially people on Medicaid, Medicare. So our recommendation is that, that their life ends. That's the slippery slope I don't want to get to. I don't want government involved at all.
Yeah.
I think that our elderly should be able to die with dignity, and we should be fostering that humanitarian, that humanitarian feeling of that our elderly still have value. My mother has Alzheimer's. I cared for her for about 8 years, and she went to live with my sister this year to kind of switch it up, give me a little break, and she's wonderful. She's a beautiful soul. She's 83 years old, but I just couldn't imagine a government who would throw away our elderly with assisted suicide just because they feel that they don't have value. I feel like one thing I've said consistently is human life is valuable from the womb to the tomb. There's no cutoff point whatsoever in that lifespan where someone should be considered a throwaway.
Yeah. This is one of those areas where I push back against people who like self-identify as anarcho-capitalists a lot, not to too much stereotype, but I feel like I've only ever had this argument with people who self-identify as that, where when you lean too hard into the capitalism side of things, and to where you're almost Marx's definition of capitalism because you go too far, like the Ayn Rand types, where to the logical conclusion, if everything really is about profit and value and all of these things, then yeah, what is what's like monetary value is someone that old who's not working, who's not, helping their community, not competent enough to like even take care of kids or something like that. Like, you're not actually providing a monetary value from a hardcore capitalist lens. The euthanasia kind of, and these like lack of value on human life thought processes are super easy to justify. And I've tried to stop quite a few people as I can see them kind of descending down this slope into just being almost nihilistically capitalist. Is like, no, the socialists have a few of the things right. We should take care of our neighbors. We should care about people. And yeah, especially, you're talking about with the government involved with this. I think even insurance being the way that it is right now, kind of having that all-encompassing control over healthcare. If you've ever had your car insurance company total your car, and when you were like, no, I could fix that, like that can be fixed, and they're like, no, we're going to total it anyway. Like, that's the inevitable logical conclusion of legalized suicide.
Right, exactly. And I know a lot of anarchists who are also Christian, myself, free included. And, I think the foundation for that Christianity that is also, our philosophy is rooted in anarchy it starts with the morality of life and that human life is intrinsically valuable. And so everything goes from there. And so the logical conclusion is that, killing someone is bad, regardless of what stage of life.
Yeah. I love Ovens O'Brien used to say a lot that I love people, that's why I love liberty, and I love liberty, that's why I love people. And it's I made it into a little quote graphic the first time I had her on my show like 5 years ago, but that one's resonated with me for a long time. Where we're here because we care about the people, not because some people are here because they care about themselves and their own freedom, and that's it. But a lot of us are here for different reasons, and we get painted as that Randian style like shitty person way too often. I dog on her too much. I do like Ayn Rand most of the time.
Yeah, I think individualism is sometimes characterized as selfish, but a lot of us are individualists because we want to care for our communities. We want localism, and we just want to make the world a better place without government involvement because they do a terrible job at it.
Yeah, I think individualism is kind of a misnomer, because I don't know many self-identified individualists who I feel like actually should be classified as such, because they are some of the more caring, community-oriented people that I know. Like, no, you're not. We need to come up with a different word, I think, because you're right, it carries some baggage that I don't think even really should apply to the ideal behind it, where it's viewed consistently, I think, as selfish from any outside perspective.
Well, I think on the flip side of that, I always tend to say that I hate collectivism, and that's characterizing other people in collectivist groups, but I tend to be collectivist from a free will perspective. We're collectivists in our churches. We're collectivists in our neighborhoods. When it's a free will association, then, individuals can still do great things within that collective and for the greater good, and, not use the government to do those things. And I still consider myself an individualist in the sense that, I'm responsible for my own person, but the collectives that I tend to associate with are more charitable or, want to see better for the world, care about life in all stages.
Yeah, I think that dichotomy has a weirdly like it's a specifically government coercion kind of dichotomy, which is strange that it's widely viewed that way as society, because most of the time they don't understand that government coercion side of things. But yeah, because even collectivism and people who say that they're like anti-collectivist are almost always talking about anti-forced or coercive collectivization, whether that's racism or something else. It's, you can self-identify as whatever you want. It's when somebody else is saying, oh, you belong in X, Y, or Z group, or then making judgments from there. But I think, if you say I'm a Christian and then I go, okay, you're a Christian, that's not collectivist. That's just agreeing with your own definitions of yourself.
Right.
Like I could put you into that camp in my head, but to then go, oh, so you must be one of those fucking asshole Christians that I grew up with. That's collectivism.
Or a Zionist, or a, whatever group you want to label somebody as.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very fine line, I feel like, between those two. That it's tough to walk, because even we'll do it, like, oh, you're a Republican, so you must be a statist.
Right.
That's still the same.
Yeah,
thing.
I guess we do that.
Every once in a while.
Try not to. I try to judge people individually,
Mm-hmm.
and on their own merits. I like to have conversations with people, especially online, and see where they're coming from, and not just assume that, oh, you voted for this person, so you must be this.
Yeah.
I get labeled that way all the time. MAGA calls me a liberal, and the liberals call me a whatever, and a Trumpian, which I'm not. So you don't want it done to you. So I try not to do it to other people.
Yeah. Something I've been personally like working on is applying that to the politicians too, especially like lower level, because I've kind of had an unspoken kind of subconscious rule that once you run for office in a party, then you're kind of abdicating that. It's you're not a civilian anymore. You put on a uniform in a different army from me, and now you are my enemy. And I still work with all the different parties, especially on a professional side, but I definitely carry with me a sense of judgment whenever I go to one of those campaigns. It's like, oh, you're probably an asshole. And then most of the time I get blindsided by actually really liking most of the candidates I've worked with. There have been some bad ones, but there have been a few like Republicans and Democrats, especially at like the state house level around the country, that I've gotten to meet that are just amazing people. And I'm glad that they're the people that won and are in government. But that's one of those like personal struggles I'm working on, is to not be too collectivist with the other parties.
Yeah, I'll work with anyone in any party who pushes liberty.
Mm-hmm.
If they're advocating for smaller government or less war, or less taxes, especially, then I'll always work with them.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I was just reading your last tweet again. It's just a conclusion. That's not a fifth topic.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've actually expanded on since that tweet is, we've had really horrible deportation practices going on in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to advocate for life, I also think that humans should be treated fairly and respectfully. And, we have these mass deportations in places like Alligator, Alcatraz in Florida, where people are being denied this. Catholics are being denied sacraments when they're being detained. There's no due process. We've had mothers picked up when they're waiting in line to get their children from school. There's actually been reports of American citizens who are picked up just because they don't have an ID on them and they have brown skin or don't speak English, or even non-citizens who are here legally who have gone to their regular check-ins and their legal status to be here has been revoked and they've been deported after being here for years at a time. I am actually encouraged today. Trump said that he is going to focus now on only violent criminals instead of more mass deportations. I don't really take him at his word much anymore after the last year, but I hope that's the case. He was acknowledging that there are people who are here who just want to work hard and, feed their families. So I feel like that's an issue that people who are pro-life, it goes back to the abortion issue. People say they're pro-life, and then once the baby is born, are you still pro-life? Do you still see value in that human being? And so these people who are here illegally, the ones that are just trying to make a living and do good for themselves, I think we need to treat them with dignity, and at best and at worst, at least give them due process. We can't just take someone who's been here 20 years and send them back to a country where they have no ties, especially when they were brought here as children.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, is so many people are being punished for decisions they weren't even allowed to make. And obviously from an anarchist perspective, borders are imaginary lines enforced by tyrannical governments who are mostly run by pedophile war criminals. So I don't particularly care if you're here illegally personally, but even if you are like kind of a law and order constitutionalist type libertarian, if they're here peacefully, we have to at least give them the chance to go through the process correctly. And sometimes you just procrastinate stuff, right? I'm sure there's a massive percentage of them that were like, I was gonna, but then I was here illegally for so long, it was kind of dicey to throw up that flag and alert them to my presence, and I was kind of fine, and I have this job, and they pay me under the table, and everything's kind of working fine, so why mess with it? And if you care about the law of everything, you could go kind of, give them a little tap and say, hey, actually do the thing. It's fine. We won't arrest you, but go do the thing, or we will. And give them a chance, because
right. Yeah. And again, I don't live, we don't live in utopia. So we do have borders, and we will always have borders. So while I would prefer that, peaceful people can choose to go where they want and take jobs from people who want to give them jobs, we don't live in that society. But I do think that our immigration laws are very broken. A lot of people say, well, just send them back and make them come back, make them get in line and come back the right way. Well, once you've been here illegally and you get deported, you can't go through the legal process. It's almost impossible. And if you're here illegally, there is no pathway to become legal. So, it's just the government is creating barriers that they say they're trying to fix, and they never fix the problem.
Yeah. That's why I think both sides have a drastically misunderstood kind of semblance of what's going on and what normally goes on. And everybody's talking about, well, Obama deported so many more people than this, and but he didn't have goon squads in the streets either.
Exactly.
But then I think a lot of people also will look back and be like, oh, before we had just Ellis Island style, and that was basically an open border. And no, it wasn't. We still deported people who were here illegally. We turned people away. There's a reason it was on an island, because they literally couldn't come on to mainland US without getting approval. And they would get turned away and not ever be able to step foot in actual New York. Like that was a real thing that was happening too. It wasn't just some, anarchist utopian version of a completely open, anybody can just do whatever they want, which I think the other side kind of misunderstands, that we never had that for the most part. We've never really had open borders, not since Plymouth Rock.
Right. Well, and you mentioned ICE. So there was a new report I was reading today that they are now allowed to, or they say they're allowed to, enter people's homes without warrants if they think that illegals live there.
Mm-hmm.
That is the worst abuse of the Fourth Amendment that I can think of. No-knock raids on peaceful people just trying to make a living, and because they didn't go through the right border to get here or sign the right paperwork. That is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think it should happen. I think, the militarization of the federal police to mass deport people is the worst criminal, egregious violation of our constitutional rights that any government has perpetrated on its own borders in decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And I honestly, I have faith that he kind of meant what he said about scaling it back, because that's pretty normal, where, they'll push the pendulum too far on purpose, so that now there's precedent set. There's 100 million people or so that are vehemently, not just like okay with, but like vehemently for everything that's happened thus far. So anything less than this, no matter how bad it is, no matter how many wrongful arrests or, people getting deported because of political opinion instead of nation of origin, they've already put in, equity into defending this position, so they can't go back on it now.
Yeah.
And now they can get away with just about anything they want.
Yeah. The deport them all crowd is, I feel the least humane. There I go, collectivizing again, but it's just so inhumane, and I don't think people realize these are human lives. These aren't just a bunch of Mexicans or a bunch of Venezuelans. These are human beings with real lives, and a lot of children who aren't citizens. And we have to have some sort of compassion. People call it suicidal empathy when I say things like this, but most of the people who come over here are not here to commit violent crimes. They're here just to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those people should be able to stay.
Yeah. And once again, when you get rid of the government and media created conflicts and narratives, you actually can address the real honest problems there, because there is a genuine risk posed to a situation where 60% of a city's population becomes people that have only been there for the last 3 years. Like, societally, economically, like just factually, there are problems with a situation like that. Whether or not we should try to stop it through government force, I don't think, but there are real concerns to mass immigration at too high of levels and too centralized. Like, there's just ways that it doesn't work, and we've proven it over and over and over again. Whether you want to look at Europe right now or plenty of other times throughout human history, where it just doesn't work out well. And if you could get rid of the partisan bullshit around it, we could actually address some of those issues. We could actually address the criminals that are coming over and being able to just kind of skate by because they're going into a blue state where you've got an army of 1,000 crazy white women willing to defend you just because you say you're an illegal immigrant, and they don't care if you're a violent criminal. If we get rid of, again, the media created conflict, we can resolve the real conflict that, again, does exist. There are real problems with just a completely open, unchecked border.
Well, I think other countries have this problem, and we have it here too, that people who are coming here were receiving welfare benefits, places to live. They were being housed. If you end the welfare state, you end the immigration problem.
A lot of it, yeah.
A lot of people who come here, they're living off of the government. And, I've had people give me statistics that more American citizens receive welfare than immigrants do. But almost 60% of people who come over here illegally are receiving benefits. So while it's a smaller number, proportionally to American citizens, it's a large number of the immigrants who are coming over illegally, especially through the Biden administration, were receiving housing, food vouchers, and they didn't have to work. And so I think if we eliminate that, and they know that they're not going to receive a handout from the government when they come over, then the only people that are going to come here are people who can support themselves or find work.
Yeah. And it was, again, a government created problem that then the government tried to solve, because what the Biden administration did is they just reclassified asylum basically and started just giving everyone asylum status, which technically made them like no longer illegal immigrants, which is better than them being completely untraced and untracked. And there is some sort of a humanitarian argument to we'll put you up in a hotel for a couple of weeks until you can find a job in a place and whatever. These people are coming over with nothing in most cases. So, there's that just slight logical conclusion again, where, this makes sense as a policy to have, where if you're coming over for asylum, but then we made the immigration process so difficult that the only way for the Biden administration to allow those people in documented of any kind was this way, where, they're getting cell phones, they're getting hotels, they're getting like everything basically, because they're being treated like a political asylum seeker who's in danger from their native country and whatever. We're giving them like Edward Snowden level like protections and benefits because that's the only way that we can do it and keep them documented in some kind.
And no permission to legally work. So how they can't get on their feet if they're not able to find jobs. Yeah,
I don't know why asylum status doesn't include working privileges. That part to me does not make sense, but I think it's because it's intended to be temporary, and hopefully we're the world's police, so you shouldn't need asylum for too long. We'll go bring democracy to your country soon enough.
Right. Because that's worked out well in the last 50 years.
Yeah, that usually just creates more of an immigration problem.
Yeah.
Always, not less.
Well, and now we're going to accept asylum seekers from Venezuela after we just got through sending them all back. It's ridiculous.
I was watching one of, I don't even remember which one it was, one of the stand-up comedians I watch a lot was doing a bit about ICE deporting Maduro, and then I was having to go back and get him again. That would be funny, just knowing that. And the other thing is the where he's being held is the same place as Diddy and Luigi Mangione. And the fact that all three of them are in the same building is a little bit of a mind fuck.
It's a little strange.
Right? It's like that's not how that belongs. But
Yeah.
All right. Well, before I let you go, tell people how they can find you and learn more about you, follow you, where you'll be. I know you're going to be at some of these conventions and events, so if people can come out and meet you in person.
Yeah, I will be traveling with Free. He's doing his live show from Are You Smarter Than a Politician? From the state conventions in California, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Texas, and then we'll be at national as well. And so if you're in any of those states, come out and see us. And you can follow me on X at AmityLee13. And I love to cyberbully politicians and talk about all things liberty.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys, you heard her. Go find her. Go follow her. Before you do that, make sure you've clicked the like button and then go share this video with all of your friends so that they can find out about this awesome, awesome person and that they can go follow her also. And then come on back here next week. I have to look because I don't remember. Oh, Mike Shaner is my guest next week. So come on back. That's going to be a good show. We've got him and then Mike Termott and then Larry Sharp. So the next couple of weeks are going to be pretty killer. Definitely make sure that you are subscribed to keep up to date on that. And again, definitely if you can go donate to the GoFundMe, I would very much appreciate it because we are trying to make these productions at all these live events as high quality as possible. So go check that out. Amity, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Thanks, David. I had a great time.
All right. You guys, thanks again for watching. Until next time, keep up the fight.